In this lesson, we're going to learn how to make an idle sequence that loops using a character and animation layers. So we've already referenced in our character here. And the first thing we want to do is we want to go over to our channel box here. And at the bottom of our channel box, you'll see that there is display layers. And then there's also a tab for anim layers. So let's click on anim layers. And this is just going to work like any layers would in Photoshop or in Maya here with display layers. They're going to be additive layers. So the first thing we need to do before we do anything else is we need to make a good looking pose for the character. Now, in this case, we're going to make a animation cycle for a fighting game. So we'll just go ahead and put our character into a boxing pose. So let's go ahead and select our character here, and let me turn all those objects off and select just curves. So now I can select my root curves. All right, I'm going to bring my root down. I'm going to turn my root so he's going to be with his left shoulder facing forward. So let's just go ahead and bring this over here. We want to make sure that whatever pose we choose, the character is on balance and they look like they're in a good neutral pose. So I've turned my root. Let's go ahead now and turn my front foot. And then I'm going to take my spine and my chest. I'm going to rotate those. And then we'll go ahead and take our head and we're going to rotate the head against the body here. And this will work with any pose that you choose to use. So let's just go ahead and bring our shoulder up. And we're going to bend this, and then we'll just collapse our fingers using all of our controls here. Now this is rigged in animation in Advanced Skeleton 5, so this character has a really good rig. If your rig doesn't have some of these things, doesn't matter, just go ahead and find a good pose. It's going to work, the process is going to work no matter what. So we'll bring our shoulder down like this. So our character is going to be like that. And then the back arm, we'll go ahead and bring the clavicle up. We'll bring the shoulder in, and we're just going to bring the elbow up. We'll bring the hand across the body, and then we'll turn the wrist here. All right, let's go ahead and do the same thing. Let's just go ahead and collapse our fist, and you can see the fingers were a little bit misaligned in the rigging, but that's okay. We'll just correct it with the controls. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, so let's just go ahead. We got a good, fairly neutral pose there. So now I'm going to exaggerate the legs just a little bit. So I'm going to turn the root. I'm going to bring this back foot back just a little bit. So let's just make sure that we're moving in world. Yeah. And then I'll bring the front foot forward like this. And then I'm going to bring the head down. So we'll collapse the chest just a little bit like this. And then we're going to go ahead and bring the neck down and the head down. And we'll bring that clavicle up. Okay, so let's go ahead and toggle around our character. It looks pretty good. Let's look at it from the front. Okay, it's looking pretty good. He's pretty upright, so let's just go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate the root back, and then I'm going to rotate the spine forward to counter, and then I'm going to rotate the chest in. Now, he could be a little bit lower, like he could be a more crouched in a more active position, but we're going to go ahead and fix that in the loop cycle. So this is our good neutral pose. Let's go ahead and select all of our keyable controls. Now, on our base layer, we're just going to go ahead and set one keyframe. That's going to be the keyframe at 0. So there's lots of different ways to add your to work with layers, but the easiest way to do it is to select all of the objects that you're going to want to animate. In this case, we're just going to select all of our keyable controls, and then we're going to put them here in a new layer. So if you look at your animation layer, you can see the far right is, go ahead and click that, and that far right is a create a new layer from the objects that are selected. Okay, so now that we've got our character in a good pose, let's select all of our keyable controls. And we want to make sure that we just go ahead and set a key here at 0. We're only going to set one key on the base layer. Now, we don't have a base layer over here in the anim layers, but if you go over to the far right corner, you can see that there is an icon, and it's create a new layer with the objects that are selected. We want to do that. We have all of our keyable controls selected. That's what we're going to use. So we'll go ahead and click that icon. You'll see it'll think for just a second, and then it creates a new anim layer 1, and then it also creates by default a base animation layer. So the base animation layer, if we click back on that, you can show that see that green dot, it means that it's active, and our key is still there at 0. So what we want to do is, now that we've got our pose, we're just going to lock that animation layer so we can't alter it again. And when we lock it, it automatically selects anim layer 1. So we're just going to select this one. If you double click on it, you can just type a new name for it. So in this case, I'm going to call it loop. And then we'll select all of our keyable controls. Now, I want my loop to be about 20 frames long, but if you'll notice that when we created this new animation layer, there are no keys. That is because when you create a new animation layer, it comes in without any animation, so you have to usually bracket it. In this case, it's going to be a looping animation, so our first and our last frame are going to be the same, so we'll just go ahead and hit S and key that. You can also sit here and you can just go ahead and key it there. So go to frame 20 and we'll do the same thing. So you'll see there's no animation on it right now, but we do have two keys. So that means that the middle key is going to be our alternating pose. So what I'm going to do is use the first and the last frame as the up pose. I'll go to frame 10, this is going to be the down pose. So my loop is basically just going to be an up and down. So I'll drag the root down, and then I'm going to take the chest and I'm going to rotate it forward a little bit. I'm going to take the, oops, sorry, wrong one. I'm going to take the head and I'm going to bring that up to kind of counter that. And then I'm going to take both of my clavicle controls. Now I have, what I do with the clavicle controls is, in order so that the arms don't look like they're flapping like a bird, I'll bring the clavicle controls down like this, and I'll bring the shoulders, I'll kind of counter them. So I'll bring them out and I'll bring them back a little bit. So now if you look, the hands aren't moving too much, doesn't look like he's flapping like a bird. I'm going to take my elbows and I'm just going to move those down just a little bit. So they're going to be following the shoulder a little bit. And then I'm going to just take my chest and my back. And just one thing that I like to do is I just like to use a little bit of translation in there just to add it. So let's just go ahead and move them down. That's going to give us extra control and overlap when we do the loop cycle. So now you can see if you play through it, our character is kind of moving up and down. He's moving very robotically right now. And the reason for that is because all of the keys are happening at the same time. So let's go ahead and add in some overlap and you'll see just how much of a difference that makes. Now let me do one more thing here with my root. Here at frame 10, I'm just going to rotate it forward just a little bit. Okay, so let's open up our graph editor. We'll take a look at it. You can see that we've just got some pretty simple looping keys. With all of my keyable controls selected, I'm just going to go ahead and select all of those keys here. And you'll see that when I select all of those keys, these are all of the keys that are in both of the layers. If I just click on loop, it'll get rid of these black keys there. And if I hit F, now it just views those keys that are in the loop layer. By default, it'll show all of the keys in all of the layers. But because we're not animating in the base layer, we don't need to see those keys. So I'm going to select all of these keys and I'm going to go here to curves, pre-infinity cycle, and curves, post-infinity and cycle. And because we're doing a loop and it's contained to 20 frames, we're going to do our offsetting here in the 20 frame region. So let's go ahead now and we're going to start overlapping. So let's select our root. And in the root, you'll notice that I rotated it forward a little bit in the X direction. So if I just select my rotate X, I'm just going to take that and I'm going to offset that one frame. So it's going to happen one frame later. I'm going to select both my spine and my chest, and I'm going to select their keyframes, and I'm going to offset those by 1, 2. Let's just do 2. And then I'm going to take their rotations, and I'm going to offset those. I have a little trouble here with this. And I'm going to offset those one additional frame. Okay, so let's just go ahead and play through just with those little bits of overlap. Let's just go ahead and play through. So you can see I'm already getting a little bit of play in there. It doesn't look quite as mechanical. Now I'm going to take my clavicle controls and I'm going to offset those as well. So I'm going to offset those 1, 2, 3, 4, let's do 5. Let's just see what that looks like. So now you can see my character is kind of doing that. It looks pretty good. You can see now it's not all happening at once. The animation's starting to overlap. And then let's go ahead and take our elbows and we're actually going to rotate, move those backwards. So we're going to offload those or offset those 2 frames earlier. So let's see what that looks like. So you can see now I'm getting a little bit of play there, get a little bit of round in the shoulders. And I can play around with the shoulders too. Like I can take the entire arm here and I can offset that a couple frames so that both of these things happen a little bit differently. Okay, last but not least, I'm just going to go ahead and take my head and I'm going to offset that a few frames too. Just offset that 3 frames. All right, so the head looks now like it's nodding. So let's just go ahead back. And you can play around with the offsets. You know, sometimes if you go in the negative, you get a little bit better of a result. And that's what we're getting with the head. So it's following the body a little bit more. Now it does look a little bit too bouncy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the head. I'm going to figure out which channel this is. It's the rotate Z that is the big offender. So let's just go ahead and reduce that just a little bit. There we go. So now it doesn't look quite as overwrought there. And then the last but not least is I'm just going to take this neck, and instead of offsetting it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to counter. If I go to my front view, you'll see that the head is kind of like leaning forward. So my character is a little bit off balance in this. So I'm just going to take my neck, and in this case, and one of the cool things about Maya is in the viewport, you can select the ring around the outside of the rotation axis, and it actually allows you to rotate in the space of that view. So in this case, from my front view, you'll see that my neck is now countering the movement of the spine and the chest. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this, and we'll go to my perspective view. All right, let's close up our graph editor, go to perspective view, and make that. Okay, so we got our character, he's looping here. All right, so this is looking pretty good. You know, and you can make your own animations, you can play around with it, you can make it a little bit different, whatever you need to do. But the concept is that the looping animation is going to keep the character alive. And then we're going to make an animation on top of this, which is going to randomize the movement so that the loop is broken up. In this case, the loop is 20 frames long. We're going to make a randomized layer that's about 100 frames long. So we'll select all of our keyable controls, and you'll see that there are all these keys here. But I'm going to go over here to that button again, and I'm going to say create a new layer from object selected. And I'm going to call this randomize, or just call them random or something. And then I'm going to change my extents here, my frame extents to 100. Now you see, because we looped the loop layer, and because 100 is or 20 is a multiple of 100, 5 loops, we're getting the exact same frame at frame 100 and frame 0. So this longer loop is going to work. So let's go ahead and select all of our keyable controls, and as we did with the loop layer, select your randomize layer and just key one at frame 0, and then go to frame 100 and key that as well. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is I'm just going to take the root, and I'm just going to play around with its positioning. So if I select these arrows here, that's going to be the outer root there. And I'm going to take the root, and if I go to the side view, let's see, fit that to view. Okay, and I duplicate it there. All right, so I'm going to take my my root, and I'm just going to move it backwards here, so that the character is going to be moving back, and then I'm going to move it forwards just a little bit, and then I'm going to, you know, back over here, I'm just going to move it backwards. So he's going to kind of move around just a little bit. And because I did that only on one axis, then it's only going to key that axis. So now I'm going to go to frame 40, and I'm going to move the character back like this. So the character's just going to kind of be moving around here. We'll go over here to frame 82, and we'll just move them this way. And you can do the same thing with rotation. You can just go ahead and change the rotation of your character. So now he's kind of moving around. He's changing. And this is what that randomized layer is. It just breaks up the loop so that it doesn't look exactly the same. And if you just see, we've already got some subtle movement in the character, so it doesn't look like that animation is looping quite so much. Okay, next I'm going to select my spine and my chest, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go here to frame like 38, and I'm just kind of picking frames at random. You can pick them based on your own preference, and I'm just going to have him turn a little bit, and then here maybe he'll come down like this, and then he'll come back a little bit like this. All right, and then I'm going to take my clavicles, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to add a little bit of overkey. So here, maybe I want his arms to be up just a little bit. So let's bring his arms up, and we'll bring him in like this. And then I'll select my shoulder, and I'll bring it up just a little bit. So just he's getting a little bit more defensive at this point. All right, so we'll do the opposite here. We'll just bring the shoulders down, and then we'll bring the clavicle back. Okay. Okay, so last but not least, I'm just going to go ahead and key in the head so that the head is kind of focusing a little bit more. So right here, he's going to be kind of looking more at his opponent. And then as he turns away here, I'm just going to make sure I fix that. So you can also fix some posing issues in this layer. All right, so now I've got that. Okay, so we've got some random movement here where the character is kind of moving around. So the last thing I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of foot movement. Every once in a while, you know, you can move the feet around. Humans, bipeds, we shift our weight quite a bit, and you don't see that captured a lot in animation, like that little frenetic movement. So let's just go ahead and take the foot there. I'm just going to raise it up here. So he's just going to do kind of a quick drag down on his foot, and he's going to move it here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy that over. here, and I'm just going to take this frame 100 and I'm just going to move that here. So he's just going to kind of move his feet just a little bit. He's going to move that front foot, right? So every time he loops, then that thing will just kind of move back a little bit. Okay, and let's just offset these, bring these back a little bit here. Okay, so what I want is as he pulls that leg, I'm just going to move that foot right there. Good, and then I'm just going to move back there. So you can play around with this and just whatever works for you. Okay, so now we have an animation idle loop that is broken up and is randomized, and this is all using animation layers. If you ever want to see those layers without the layers, you can just go ahead and click over here on the mute, and now you're just going to be seeing the loop. If you ever want to see what the randomized layer looks like without the loop, you can do that too. So this is basically just the randomized layer that's on top. And you can also change the values of how much the layer is playing. So you can also key this loop layer, the weight here. You can just select your layer node here. And then you can go to your base animation layer. You can see that the loop layer is actually a part of the base animation layer. Go to frame 0, and then you're just going to right click at weight, and you're going to say key selected. Then you're going to do the same thing over here at 100 and key selected. And then you can actually drop that weight down. So let's just drop it down to like 0.2 here in the middle, and you'll see that we'll just go ahead and key this. And now what'll happen is our loop layer will be very powerful at the beginning, and then in the middle you can see that it is very much reduced, and then again it goes back to 100% at frame 100. And so you can animate the weight of your layers throughout the course of your animation, but you have to do it here at the base animation layer. Hope that gives you a good insight in how to create an idle cycle using animation layers. Good luck.